Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I believe we are ready to go ahead and get started here. Thank you all for attending the Battle for Books Part 2. As many of you know, this is our second installment of Battle for Books. Our first one was back in September, and we had really some great positive responses from it. A lot of stores asking us to do this again, so here we are, and I'm sure today is going to be just as great. Now, my name is Lillian Howard. I am the corporate marketing rep for MBS, and I'm also going to act as your moderator for today. Now, as far as our agenda goes, we have two presenters for you. We have Jason Lorgan, Associate Director at UC Davis Stores, and Sean McDonough, General Manager of ACES Campus Store at Alfred State. Now, once our presenters have finished, for those of you who want to stick around, I will get back on the line for an interactive session on the new enhancements we've made to MBS Rental, and I'm going to answer any questions you might have about the new enhancements. All right, so with that, we'll go ahead and get started. As I said just a second ago, Jason Lorgan is our first presenter today. Jason is the Associate Director at UC Davis, and he's going to share with us his tips on competitive pricing strategy. So, all right. Jason, are you ready?
I am. Thanks, Lil. I'm glad to be on the call. Hello, everybody. I'm Jason from UC Davis. For those of you that don't know, UC Davis is located in between San Francisco and Sacramento, closer to Sacramento in Northern California. I'm going to talk today about some pricing ideas and mainly focus on rental with pricing, but some other pricing thoughts as well. UC Davis has 8 stores. We have a medical store, veterinary store, law store, recreation store, convenience store, our main bookstore, and we have a downtown store and an off-site warehouse. We do rental in 3 of our bookstores, our main store, our medical store, which serves Graduate School of Management and University Extension, and also our law store. Okay, the first slide here talks about the 80-20 rule, which many of you have heard about before, and I'm kind of going to apply this to our business. The thought being that 80% of your sales probably come from 20% of your titles. So pricing that 20% competitively is very important. That 20% of titles is probably your general ed, psychology 101 type titles that are very large enrollment and that you can have a large impact on. Those are typically the ones that the students pay attention to the pricing on as well. If you're a store that has a lot of titles, our store has 2,300 titles per quarter on average. It could be very difficult to pay attention to all 2,300 titles on pricing and how it compares to the online marketplace. So I'm going to suggest that if you pay attention to your top 20% of your titles, which probably represent the majority of your sales, that's probably a good strategy to take. Newer editions are a lot easier to price competitively than older editions, which is probably stating the obvious, and I'm going to show some screenshots from some of our price comparison screens that show how difficult it can be to price competitively on older edition books, which is why I think focusing on newer editions is a good way to go. Okay, this first screenshot is, you may recognize this as MBS Insight. This is our store's website. And we have verb price comparison integrated onto our Insight application. And this screen here demonstrates, you can see at the top the published date of 2011 is circled. So this is an example of a newer edition that you can be competitive pricing on. And you can see that our used price is $99. And then if you look at the bottom under the Compare Prices tab, you can see that our used book is very competitively priced to begin with. And that's just using our standard margin. We use a 23% margin here. But I particularly wanted to point out the new rental and the used rental and to show how very, very competitive those prices can be, and that if you decide to offer a price comparison service, this can really build customer loyalty and can really change the perception of the bookstore's pricing model by putting this right up there. I also wanted to point out under the Compare Prices tab, you can see the top two prices are actually rental, which we do an affiliate program with Follett, that you could also do Book Renter or Chegg. But I wanted to point that out because a lot of the online rental programs show a price, and that price is actually for a 30-day rental. So if you were all the way to the right, you could see the shopping cart. If a student were to click on that for any of these other vendors, it would bring them right to their website, and the student could actually buy from that website. And our store would collect a small commission for directing them there. The commission is not much. You're certainly not going to make a ton of money on it, but you do make some money on it. And the way we kind of looked at it was we were making 0% on those titles, and so to make a small percent of a smaller retail is better than 0. But once the student followed that shopping cart for the Follett rental, for example, they would find that that would be a 30-day rental. So our rental price is still lower than that one, but once they had switched to a 90-day rental, since we're quarters, or a 120-day rental if you're on semesters, you would find that this price is significantly lower. And I'm going to talk about how we arrive at our rental prices later. But basically, I'll simply state that you can make an identical margin as you do with your purchase margin. This next screen is basically that same screenshot a little bit larger, so it's easier to see. And I think the most exciting thing about price comparison is for your students to discover when they see $36 as a used rental, and they find the cheapest price on Amazon at $113, that's something that really sticks with in a student's mind. I had a publisher rep from Wiley come into my office pretty excited a couple weeks ago, and she said, I just had to stop in. She said, I was down on the text floor and I overheard something so exciting I had to tell you about it. She said, I heard two girls talking in the textile, and they were looking at the book, and the one girl said to the other, gee, do you see what the price is here at UC Davis? I got my book at Amazon, and I spent $40 more. I should have just got it here. And so, that we used to always hear the opposite. And so the fact that we can start hearing that we're a better deal than Amazon is something that's very exciting and is something we haven't heard before, and we're really happy to hear it. This next screenshot I'm going to show is an example of an older edition title. And this is an example of one that is very difficult to compete with. You can see that the edition is circled 2005. Our used price is $60, new price is $81. And you can see that there are numerous copies available for less than $2 online. And so our cost on this book is $40, approximately $40 for a used copy, and approximately $60 for a new copy. So you can tell that they're being sold online for a new, $40-some below our used cost, and $70 or $60 below our new cost. And so this isn't something we can really compete on. And even if we had rental on this title, we're just totally out of the market on this. The next screenshot is just a larger representation of this. I put this screenshot on here because price comparison is something that's scary to a lot of people, and it was certainly scary to me when we started with it in the spring of 2010 because of this exact example, because who wants to show your price being $60 or $80 and the online price being $2? But it actually has had a very interesting result. Something that I attended our regional association meeting last week, and one of the general session speakers was talking about Generation Y, or the millennials, and one of the points she was making is that this generation, more than any other generation, does not trust businesses, and they don't trust the marketing message. And the point she was trying to make, which I think we can all relate to, is that every retailer claims that they have the lowest price, the best selection, the best service, etc. Everybody makes those claims, and so they don't have a lot of meaning to us when we hear them, because we just consider it marketing, and they're going to put their best foot forward and say what they think we want to hear as consumers. And so when you put information up like this, what we're starting to hear from our customers is, boy, when you show me the bad along with the good, suddenly your marketing has credibility and I trust you again. I believe the message you're telling us because I don't see this on other retailers. And so that's been a really positive impact for us. This individual book for fall, there were 20 students enrolled in this class. We actually sold 11. Very surprising to me that we post this information and still 11 out of the 20 students, which is our average, maybe even above average sell-through we have on a title. So it doesn't necessarily kill your sales, but it definitely gains you credibility with the students, and that's been a really interesting impact of price comparison for us. So basically, those are some examples, those screenshots of Verba Compare, and I'm going to show you a little bit about Verba Compete because I wanted to show you some of the tools that already exist in the marketplace that can help you analyze pricing and decide on what your price should be. And so you don't have to do a lot of research yourself because there are tools that are out there that will do it for you, and that's what I'm going to try to demonstrate. And what's really exciting is that they're now integrated with both the MBS text applications and Insight. And we had been running both this program as a standalone site before they were integrated with MBS. And it's just so much better for so many different reasons that it's integrated, as I'm sure you can imagine. So the next screen, this is a screenshot of what the Verba Compete personalized dashboard looks like. And I wanted to show this screen because this is kind of one of the first things you come upon. And this graph on here actually represents every title in our bookstore for fall quarter. And what each one of those lines on the graph represents is a different book. Now there's, about 2,000 little lines that you couldn't even identify if you tried to count them yourself. But when you move your mouse over the graph, you will, when you point onto one of the lines, you actually get a book. So this screenshot didn't capture where my mouse was, but when my mouse was at a certain point, you could see just above the graph on the left, the book I was pointing to was Abnormal Psychology with the access card. So each one of those little colors indicates a particular book, and it compares it to the marketplace. So on the left side of the graph, those are titles in which we are below the marketplace price. And on the right side of the graph, we are above the marketplace. So you can see that in the middle, which is where we're right on the marketplace, on that $0 line. When you actually load this software, all of this happens in about 10 seconds. It's quite remarkable. I don't know how it's done. I'm just happy that it's done for me. The next screen drills down to an individual book level. So on the left side of the screen, you can see that there are a bunch of titles. One of them happens to be highlighted in a light blue, Calculus for Biology and Medicine. So all of the graphs you see on the right side relate to that one title. If you look at the very top left, you can see that I have this sorted by the most estimated sales. So it actually takes the data out of TA2 and the MBS text application and ranks it based on how many estimated sales I put in. So based on the 80-20 rule I was talking about earlier, where you want to focus on your largest titles, the system will basically do this for you, where it sorts your books by your most estimated sales, so your largest enrollment titles, and then you can filter through and go down as far as you want or not. So if you look in the center near the graph, you can tell when I took this screenshot, I had my mouse over the bottom red circle. And you can see on the legend here that red is rental. And so it shows me at that point in time. So if I did this, each day I do this, this graph looks different because it's in real time and it's taking the actual book prices that are online at this point in time. So I can compare my price to what it is online, basically in a graphical format here. So that's something that's very useful as you're trying to look at your top titles and see where you are in pricing. Thankfully, what we have found in doing the wholesaler rental programs is that very often we come out less expensive than Chegg Book Renter, Chegg and Book Renter, for example, which are the two most common online rental sites. And so that's something that's very exciting to us. And you can see the new and used as well on that chart. Going to the next screen, you can see I'm still on the same book, Calculus for Biology and Medicine, which you can see highlighted on the left side. But now you can see a chart for my new price and the used price. I'm going to focus on the used price right now. But if I were able to scroll down on this, if it were an actual, if I were actually live on the site, I would also see new rental and used rental and a comparison between the two. But I'm just going to focus on the bottom used graph for now and just point a couple things out that I think are really useful and interesting. So the solid black line is actually our price, and so that is our used retail, which it looks like is $118.85. And so then you can see the yellow squiggly line, which actually represents the online marketplace price. And what's interesting about this is on the bottom of the graph, I'm trying to remember my geometry, I guess that's the x-axis, you can see that there are dates there. So I had pulled this screenshot a while ago, so that's why the dates are a couple months old. But you can see that if I had analyzed the pricing in early August or July, that my price was about $10 higher than the online marketplace price for a used book. So if I had reduced my price by $10 from my normal margin to match or beat the online marketplace price, I really would have done so unnecessarily and thrown away margin that I really could have used, because as you see when we get closer to rush, let's say you start at the end of August, you can see it on the September 1st line, or even, but right after August 16th, you can see that the UC Davis store price, represented by the black line, is actually lower than the online marketplace price. So what I really wanted to point out on this screen is when you compare your pricing to online marketplace, it's very important to pay attention to what the date is, because once all the cheap books are gone, they're the first ones to go, you may not have to adjust your pricing at all. And so that's something that's kind of exciting about this tool. It allows you to do all that work very easily. So in-store rental, I think, is really the key to having the lowest price, and that's kind of what I'm going to spend the rest of the time talking about. In-store rental really puts you back in the pricing game. You can find that your store can actually be the lowest price option a student can find on most of the titles that you rent. And that's something, again, that has really never taken place before. We've always been thought of as having the highest price, and that was probably a well-earned reputation because we pretty much always did have the highest price when compared to the online marketplace. A 23% margin really throws us completely out of the ballpark. If we were to sell things at cost and compare it to the online price, we would still be higher than many of the prices. So rental is really the first thing that has allowed us to compete on price with the online marketplace sellers. And a lot of stores think you have to sacrifice margin when you offer rental, but you don't. And you can actually maintain your margin. I don't necessarily mean maintain the margin in percentage. I mean maintaining it in dollars, which is even better, because if your rental price is going down and you're basing it on percent, a set percent of a smaller number is a smaller number. And so the point I'm trying to make here is if we made $25 selling a book, we can also make $25 renting that book and still offer our students a significantly lower price. So you can see the graphic on the right. When we introduced our textbook rental program, we don't ignore the other things that we've always done. We still indicate that we have the most used textbooks and the largest UC buyback program, because those are still critically important. One of the things, while rental is the big trend and the big buzzword, in this store, we still, our students still purchase 75% of the units we sell are purchased and 25% are rented. So, but what I think is exciting about the rental, even though it's the minority of the books we're selling or renting, is that we've probably always had the customers who weren't super price conscious, who were here for one-stop shopping, easy refunds, drop a class, no problem, etc. I think we've always had those customers, and we still do have those customers. What rental has allowed us to do is go after the customer where price is the only thing they're looking at. And so rental has allowed us to get those customers back. So we're maintaining our purchase customers by still focusing on used books, buy back, all the things we've always focused on. And then we're trying to bring more market share back to the bookstore that has gone online. This next screenshot shows how we do our rental pricing and how we're able to maintain the same exact margin in dollars that we've done before. We don't use a set percentage. While we do use a set percentage in margin for our purchase price, we don't for rental. And before I started in the college store business, I've been doing this for 18 years. I was in the supermarket business, and one of the things that always struck me was when you would look at an invoice for any given aisle, whether it be pet food or soda or whatever. When you looked at the invoice, every solitary product you sold was sold at a different margin, and it was all being done based on competitive pricing. And so it was really odd to me when I joined this industry so that we used a standard formula, a standard percentage for every book. And so while I still do that with purchases for a variety of reasons, rental is not something we use a standard percentage on, although we do use the standard formula for the most part. We take the new retail, which we get using the 23% margin we've always done, and we subtract the wholesaler rebate, and that gives us our new rental price. And then we do the same thing with used books. We take the used retail, subtract the wholesaler rebate, and that gives us a used rental price. One of the questions that I'm asked often about rental pricing is, why do you have a different new rental price and used rental price? Why don't you just have one rental price? And I usually answer that with another question. My question is, why do you have a different new purchase price and a used purchase price? And the answer is usually because they have different costs. Well, that's exactly why we have a different new rental price and a used rental price. So using that formula with some real numbers, assuming my favorite easy math example of a $100 new retail and a $75 used retail, and assuming the wholesaler was giving us a $46 rental rebate on that title, we would determine our new rental price by taking $100 new minus the $46 rebate would give us the $54 new rental price. And with used, it would be the same formula. $75 used minus $46 rebate would give us a $29 used rental price. I just want to focus on that for a moment. Think of that. The student comes in, they look at your shelf tag, they see $100 new, and they see $54 new rental and $29 used rental. So that used rental is 71% off the new retail price. That is stunning to me. It's still stunning to me, even this is our fourth major quarter doing rental. And the fact that we can rent a book for 71% less than the new price and still make the identical margin in dollars we made when we sold that book truly seems too good to be true, and I can't believe that the bright minds in this industry didn't think of this earlier. So that's something that's very exciting on this campus, and hopefully you guys are similarly finding it exciting on your campus. So our store's rental overview, again, we started in fall quarter of 2010, and we started with 246 titles, and we thought that was being very aggressive. A lot of our staff had said, well, let's start with 5 or 10 titles. And we kind of thought, well, if we have 2,300 titles and we start with 5, how are we going to measure the success or failure of the program if 98% of our students come in and they can't find one of their books as a rental? And I didn't really feel like we could say we had a rental program. So we started as large as we could. At that time, it was 246. And in winter, we upped it to 350. Those 2 quarters, we were using serialized rental, which is pretty labor-intensive. I think serialized rental is probably a good method to use if you're keeping the same title and renting it over and over. That's not the method we use here. We actually get rid of all of our rental books at the end of each quarter to the wholesaler, even if it's readopted. And we do that for a couple reasons. One, on the quarter system, sometimes we only have 5 days in between final exams and rush, but also because as wholesale buyback is declining, which it is on most campuses, including this one, This allows us to supply inventory to the wholesaler. We recognize that that's our value to the wholesaler, is that we provide their inventory for them. And we want to pull a lot of used books out of MBS, and so in order to do so, I need to send them books. And so by sending them our rental titles, we're actually sending more books to the wholesalers in dollars than we have historically when we add our rental titles in there. So in spring, we beta tested the new MBS Rental non-serialized, some people call it rent at POS or rent on demand, and we did 426 titles. We were really surprised at how much easier it got when we did non-serialized rentals. So it was so much easier that in fall quarter we almost doubled that number. Actually, we more than doubled that number. I just had to do the math quickly in my head, and went to 930 titles. But again, we averaged 2,300 titles per quarter. So in our mind, we think we're great with 930 titles, but our customer doesn't feel the same way. They're coming in here, and we're hearing comments from our customers saying, gee, they only had 2 of my 5 books available to rent. And so if we're all promoting rental, and if the media is promoting rental, and if rental is the word that everybody's using and the strategy that people are using to reduce their textbook costs, we recognize that we need to have as many rental titles as possible, or because that's what our customers are really looking for right now. At least, again, those that are price conscious. We're still selling more books than we're renting, but we're trying to win back market share from the online marketplace with rental. So the fear we had going into rental was much worse than the reality, and believe me, we had lots of fears. And they really, there were some difficult portions of it, but for the most part, it was rather simple. And now with the MBS system rental enhancement, the process is so much easier. It's really hard to believe how easy it's become. Other than setting your price and checking a few flags on each book, that's really all there is to do to set up your rental program and then getting the shelf tag up there. So we set a goal for this winter of 1,400 titles, and I hope that we'll, of course, exceed that, but we'll see what happens. So I believe this is my last slide, and I just wanted to demonstrate a couple things on this picture here. First of all, this is a picture of our shelf tag, and when you look at the new book price of $228, a used book price of $171, that's a staggering amount of money to pay for a book. And I think anyone who would approach a shelf tag like that gets a pretty negative feeling when they look at it. And a used book used to be really our salvation. It was the way we provided value to our student. And one of the difficult things with the continual price increases that has happened is very few people would perceive $171 as a good buy. But those same people would probably perceive $120 or particularly $63 as a good value. And so the people who want to keep their books and who are not financially challenged, we still have the $228 and $171 available for them. But the people that we're trying to win back, we've got the rental prices now, which really put us back in the game, as I said before. And then the picture of the shelf I wanted to point out, because this is actually, as you can probably tell, our English section. So we're even renting trade paperback books because we want to get our title count up, and we want our customers asking us for rental. So even if they don't rent a lot of these titles, those that do, we feel like, if they could save a few dollars, they're saving a few dollars. Many of us in our own lives, I always say if we can save $2 by getting our Colgate toothpaste at Target, many of us get it at Target instead of at the supermarket. And so that has changed our mindset a little bit by saying, well, you only save $3 on a trade paperback. Well, how many of us in our own personal consumer behavior do go for the $3 savings? So we try not to make that decision for our customer and put it out there and let the customer make the choice for themselves. And it's pretty exciting when the students come onto the shelf and see all of these books available. Every one of those blue tags indicates that book is available to rent. So in this shot, there's only a couple titles that are not available to rent, and that's pretty exciting. So that is my last slide, and with that, I will turn it back over to Lil.
All right, thank you so much, Jason. Okay, our next presenter is Sean McDonough from ACES Bookstore at Alfred State. He is the general manager there, And Sean is going to talk to us about his in-store rental program. Sean, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great.
Okay, just a little background. Alfred is a tiny rural community up in upstate New York, and our college, hang on one second. There we go. Our college has 3,000 students, so we're much smaller than Jason's college. I actually work for the ACES, which is a non-for-profit corporation that was set up to run most of the support services on campus, including the bookstores. We have 2 bookstores. We have 2 campuses. One's a vocational campus, and our main campus, where we do most of our rentals, is in Alfred. Annual sales are about $3 million, of which 50% is in textbooks. Here on this campus, debit cards, financial aid is king, and we funnel a lot of our non-billable financial aid through our debit card system, and so about 60% of our transactions go through that debit card system. We started renting in the fall of 2010. We used also the serialized rental, which was pretty labor intensive. With that, we have to manipulate the inventory, reclassify textbooks ahead of time, and we have to label each textbook with its individual serial number. The positives of serialized is each serial number is tied to a specific customer, that so the return process is a lot easier. Excuse me. Here at Alfred, we use counter service, which we're kind of in a minority. We have many reasons why it works for us, but in particular with the rental program, it fit like a glove, because we're able to, as we pull the books, we're able to communicate to the student that, what's available to them, whether we have used a digital option, and now with the rental option, we explain it, give them what the price differences are, and at that point we would put the serial sticker on as well as our rental sticker and send them to the register to be rung up. And also we provide them with our 2-part rental agreement that they have to sign. Our pricing, we try to keep it simple. Currently, we just use a 50% of the new price, regardless of whether it's new or used. We pick new when we have it. Once we're out of the new books, then we'll pull the used books, and we haven't had any students really complain about that, and it enables us to pick up a little bit more margin. Our biggest concern with the MBS program, it takes a lot of the risk away from us that I was most concerned going in. But the one concern is getting the books back from the students in a timely fashion. What has been effective for us is we've created distribution lists of all of our rental customers, and we hit them with emails starting, for example, now we've started end of October, and we'll probably email all of our rental customers between 4 and 6 times. And basically what that does is it opens up a dialogue with the student, and we get questions, responses back from the email, everything from I didn't realize I rented, what did I rent, when can I bring it back, can I buy it? So a lot of good questions that we can help them plan to get the books back in a timely fashion. And we also utilize it to try to get them into the store and give them a discount if they bring it in. So that's kind of a win. Now, as I said before, we started renting in fall of 2010, and we had 25 titles, and we ended up with $33,000 in rental sales, which we had no idea going in what it was going to be like, and we were quite happy with that, actually. My biggest concern, again, was how many books were we not going to get back from the student, And the first semester it shook out to be about just under $1,000, which could have been worse, but we thought that was lower than anticipated, so we were pretty good with that as a starting point. The most important thing is that the students and faculty were very happy with the program, and it was pretty obvious that we needed to continue it and grow it. Spring of 2011, a lot more students knew about it. We had more titles. From an operational standpoint, we continued with serialized and counter service, obviously, and we did $30,000, a little bit less, but as a percentage of sales from our fall to spring semester, typically we do about 50 to 60% less in textbooks. So in reality, as a percentage of textbooks, that was a nice increase. And again, our return rate actually got better. Now, fall of 2011, we had more titles, but what was most important is we implemented the new POS system, which made the operation run so much better. We eliminated serialized part of it, and we're able to rent at the register, basically. Most everything is at the register. We still have counter service, and we do communicate to the students at the time that we pull textbooks, but we don't have to put the serialized sticker on, and when the student goes up to the register will prompt the cashier of whether they wanted to rent or buy. And we more than doubled our sales, which we knew it was going to increase. We had no idea it was going to increase that much, and obviously we are just we haven't finished this semester, so we don't know what kind of loss there was going to be with that. So over time, the number of titles that we're making available has almost tripled, and and we're expecting the slope of that line to be much steeper with the new MBS's program that makes things much easier. Rental sales, obviously, again, significant increases over time, and we're expecting this to increase even more. There aren't too many categories, other product categories, that we're seeing these kinds of increases. Sales have been relatively flat the last 4 or 5 semesters, so this is encouraging to us. And the one area where we really want to increase and do better at is getting a better return rate. We're not concerned with it, but we think we can do better with that. At least they're showing some improvement there. And there we go. Looking forward, again, with the new rental program, over 110,000 titles will be available, and what we like is that there's no quantity restrictions with the new program. From an operational standpoint, we're going to continue to do as we have been. With the new program, there's multiple tiered pricing, and so we're going to look at pricing a little bit differently. And for that matter, we're going to be looking at pricing for textbooks in general differently with Verba Complete. It's something that we think we need to do. In terms of getting the return, an increase in the return rate, we're looking in the future of securing it with a credit card. Currently, we don't secure it with a credit card. We kind of secure the rental with our debit card system, but we're looking into that with our new POS system. So basically, if you don't have a rental program, there's no better time than right now to put one in place, both from a financial and operational standpoint. It's much easier, and it puts you in much better light with all players involved. it's the trend everybody is talking about, and most people are just expecting that you have it. At the start of every semester, there's typically newspaper articles about the price of textbooks, and I usually cringe when I start to read them. But after our first rental season, we were somewhat featured in an article which really shed some good light on us and created some goodwill with everybody involved, which we were pretty proud of. So I think that's about it. Thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you, Sean. All right, and thank you, Jason, as well. Now, we do have their contact information listed here. If you guys would like to contact Jason or Sean for additional information, just please feel free to go ahead and do that. And now we're going to go ahead and move on to the bonus session. And I'm going to quickly cover the new enhancements to MBS Rental. And as this webinar really is all about you, we're going to make this portion very interactive. So I'm going to open up the floor to all of you after I go through the basics of the new enhancements. So go ahead and start thinking about your questions. In the lower right-hand corner, there's a little blue bubble icon, and that's the actual chat window, and you can just click on that and get your questions in there, and I will answer as soon as I'm done. I only take about 5 minutes here going through the enhancements. You know, and as many of you saw over the last week in our email blast and our coverage on the Forward Online, even Facebook, you know, we've made several enhancements to MBS Rental, and all of these enhancements are a result of us listening to what you actually wanted and needed. Now, keep in mind, all of these enhancements that we talk about today are effective as of November 21st, which is Monday. Now, the 21st is a big day because that is the first day you can submit your title list for the spring 2012 term. And now, you know, we all know in the past rental has been somewhat labor-intensive and limited, but with all these enhancements, that's all about to change. MBS Rental is easier, and as I've said, we've listened to you. You need more titles on your shelf available for rent, and you want to find a way to help keep the rental sale in your store without necessarily having to outsource to a third party. So because of all your feedback, these are the 5 enhancements. Okay, the first one, we now have 3 tiers of pricing. Tier 1 is 46%, which that is staying the same. That's not going anywhere. That 46% has been here since we started and launched the program about a year and a half ago. So that is staying the same. But now we have 2 additional tiers. Tier 2 is 27%, and Tier 3 is 12%. And that Tier 3 is mainly going to focus on your trade titles, which are now going to be part of the titles that we guarantee pricing on. So because of these 2 new additional tiers, we're now allowed, or it actually allowed us to guarantee pricing on over 110,000 titles. We all know right now having that rental option on your shelf is crucial, and you know that's why we wanted to ensure we're giving you exactly what you need, and that's more titles on your shelf available for rent. And this is huge, and I think that you're going to be able to see the impact on this on Monday when you get your listen to us. It's going to be, should be a good day. Okay, next step. The next change is unlimited quantities. This means you no longer have to worry about over-renting on the quantity. Any title that has a guaranteed price is guaranteed at an unlimited quantity. Now again, the goal here was ease of labor. And for our system customers that have the benefit of using that non-serialized rental, you know, this makes having a rental program that much easier to manage. So the unlimited quantities is going to be huge as well. All right, next step, we now have no restrictions or requirements on what you have to send us each term. You can choose to send us the books, or you can keep the books. It's totally up to you. It's your choice. That 85% rule that we've had in the past, that is gone. It's now up to you to decide whether or not you want to keep the books or send the books into us for your guaranteed payment. This also means you no longer have to submit to us that preliminary sales data. That requirement is gone as well. You know, again, our goal was to eliminate that administrative overhead and labor, making it as easy as possible to implement and keep a rental program in your store. Now, because of that goal, we've also eliminated the need to sign a rental agreement with us. To participate in MBS Rental, all you have to do is submit your rental list. So beginning on Monday, when you go to submit your list, you know, for our system users, they're going to be able to submit their rental request list through the rental application. And again, that's beginning on Monday. And for the non-system users, you will submit your list to rental@mbsbooks.com. And again, that's beginning on Monday the 21st for the spring 2012 semester.